Oh, there they are. Front and back.
You're on.
You're up.
You're up.
Oh, good evening. I call the Johnson City Board of Commissioners meeting on June 18th, 2020 to order. Tonight, this will be our first in-person meeting for, I think, about 2 months, has it been? We have, Mr. Peterson, thank you so much. They've erected plexiglass in between us so we can stay safe. All the members of the audience have their mask on, and we appreciate that so much. This evening, we have Pastor Hood from Central Baptist Church to give our invocation. If we could all rise and stay standing for the pledge after that.
Well, good evening, everyone. I would invite you to bow with me in prayer. God, we are grateful to you for the opportunity that is ours tonight to gather in this place, mindful of the significant restrictions we've been under this year to protect one another from infection. We pray that those restrictions have served and continue to serve their intended purpose of keeping us safe. But just because we are able to be together here now does not mean that the difficult decisions are all behind us, nor is the pandemic now past. In addition, we are also now more keenly aware than at any time in recent memory of the racial tensions that plague us as a people and the need for equitable justice for every person. So we lift up our elected leaders to you, Lord, asking that you bless them with the wisdom and energy they need to govern wisely during this challenging and exhausting time. And give us all the wisdom to treat one another with kindness, courtesy, and respect, and thus showing ourselves to be true reflections of your character and your spirit. And all this we humbly ask in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Face the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Peterson, as Pastor Hood talked about what's going on in our community, there are a couple things I think you want to give a little bit of update on, and that Chief Turner also will add to that. So I'm going to turn it over to you before we get to our agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I said, for starters, to give an update on where we are in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been a trying spring, late winter. We've made many adjustments, as is evidenced by the dividers between us and the requirements for masks in public. I'd certainly want to express sincere appreciation to our staff for being very flexible and for being resourceful and finding ways for us to continue to do business and to deliver the same quality services with the same efficiency that we always have. That has involved some changes in the way we delivered our services. The trash got picked up the same way, the leaves, water and sewer were delivered the same, but we have made some changes, excuse me, down in finance, the way we're doing business with people and encouraging people to operate with us through an electronic fashion. Same thing in development services. We found a way for folks to drop off plans to where we can pick them up and review them and have them ready for them the next evening. So it's been a change in the way we've delivered services in some cases, but I think we've done an effective job of ensuring that the people's business got done in a timely fashion. We certainly want to also recognize and express sincere appreciation to all of our citizens. It's everyone's responsibility as well as every employer's responsibility to ensure the safety of your employees and for your fellow Johnson Cityans or visitors to our community, from wearing masks, from social distancing, if you feel sick, stay home, those types of things. I think that's the one of the significant reasons that we haven't experienced a lot of cases in Washington County. But the fight's not over. There's still some time that needs to pass for whether you believe in herd immunity, immunizations, vaccines. We still haven't completely figured out how to successfully live with the existence of the COVID virus amongst us. And there's been too many sacrifices made, both personally and financially, to give up the fight now and just forget that it's here. That's evidenced by the fact that over the last week or so, Tennessee is experiencing somewhere between 600 and 800 new diagnosed cases on a daily basis. As most people suspected, the incidence of positive cases has risen 6 to 8 weeks after we started opening up. It's no big surprise. We're doing extensively more testing than we were doing previously, so you expect higher numbers. But we just ask everyone to continue to practice good common sense. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Social distance. Wear a mask when you're out in public. It's upon each and every one of us on an individual basis to make sure that we learn how to live with this latest virus and to live with it successfully. And it's just going to take a lot of due diligence on the part of all of us to do that. We went from a state of normal to a state of shutdown rather quickly. As I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of adjustments and a lot of learning that took place. And for the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been in a mode of let's open things up. So City Hall is now open. Everyone entering the building will have their temperature checked. Should be asked a series of questions. Are you ill? Have you been around anyone that's been ill? Those types of things. Anyone in the building is required to wear a mask in common areas. And that is the case with all of our buildings in terms of the way we're opening up and allowing and interacting with the general public. The parks were never closed. There were areas of parks that were closed. We're now in a reopening phase such that baseball, softball, golf, disc golf, a number of events like that can take place, and those fall under the category of non-contact sports. So what we're relying on in terms of making decisions are the governor's executive orders as well as the Economic Recovery Group, or the ERG, guidelines and recommendations for reopening up things. So we're following those very closely. They still do not allow contact sports to occur yet. That is basketball, football, wrestling, any activity where you have very close contact with other humans and there's a likelihood of the exchange of body fluids, I guess. It does allow for contact sports to train and to do skill building activities on an individual basis. So you probably are aware that the high school athletic teams are doing some conditioning and training. You will start probably seeing more basketball teams do training and skills drills on an individual basis. They still cannot scrimmage, they still cannot play games. And due to that fact that basketball is considered a contact sport, which is not allowed, we still have not opened up the outdoor basketball goals. We can't control that. We don't have the staff. So we remain to keep those closed. There are indoor courts that we are beginning to open up to training and individual skill drills and those types of things. So it's a soft reopening, a gradual reopening. but that is being driven by the executive orders and the recommendations of the ERG. So we're getting there. We're close. I think as a society, we're learning how to deal with the virus now. There's a lot of economic activity occurring. There's a lot of athletic activity occurring. Baseball and softball have been back for a couple of weeks. Beginning this weekend, we will be allowing baseball and softball tournaments on a limited basis, not to exceed 50% capacity of our facilities. So, for example, at Winged Deer, we have a 4-field complex and then a 5th field that lies off by itself. 2 of the fields in the 4-plex will be allowed to be utilized, and then the 5th field, that is going to require some modifications to the customary concessions. It involves some modifications to the fixed seating. It involves the number of players allowed to sit in the dugout at one time. So it's going to look different. The activity is going to be allowed. We're just going to have to approach it a little different for a while. Of course, police services, fire services, other than wearing personal protective equipment, those services haven't been modified whatsoever. Our construction crews are still out there working and with the proper equipment of PPE. So we're getting there. We're just asking everybody, be diligent, be responsible, be respectful of the people you're going to be in contact with by keeping social distancing, proper hygiene, and wearing a mask so that we can control the best we can the potential spread of the virus. And I don't even purport to be a wannabe doctor, but from what I have learned, there's a tremendous amount of spread through asymptomatic people. So just because you feel good or somebody you're around doesn't exhibit any signs that they're ill, they could very easily spread it to you or a loved one as easily as someone that's exhibiting signs. So we just need to be diligent and be careful. And and I'm going to ask Chief Turner to come up and provide some more detail to this. But as he's coming up, we've also dealt with different groups expressing their feelings and expressing the need for change in Johnson City. And we had a meeting last Friday with the New Generation Freedom Fighter representatives, and that is a very impressive group of young people and a very reasonable group of people to sit down and have a conversation with. And I feel very positive that there is a desire and a willingness by everybody involved in those conversations to review what's going on and recognize that there are a tremendous number of good things already happening in our community, and that there are things that we can sit down and address way beyond law enforcement that are societal issues, not law enforcement issues. We have had practices and requirements in place for 15 or 20 years that address the vast majority of the concerns being expressed by folks across the country about local law enforcement. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Turner. And Chief, if you could provide them a little more detail on what we're talking about, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson, Mayor, Commissioners. We did have a good meeting with a group that represented the New Generation Freedom Fighters. I've also been in contact with other people in the community, our faith-based community. Citizens have contacted me either by email or phone call, and so we've tried to respond to those as best we could about some of their concerns with the police department. Some of the discussion has been around 8 Can't Wait, and there's a list of initiatives that they would like to see in police departments, they being the community, and many of those are already in place here in Johnson City, and it's part of the accreditation process that we go through, and we've been accredited since 1993. So and that's through CALEA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. And that body came about as a collaboration between the International Associations of Chiefs of Police, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, or NOBLE, the National Sheriff's Association, and the Police Executive Research Forum. So they kind of put together what standards they would like to see in law enforcement as far as a professional law enforcement agency. And those standards are best practices in law enforcement. As you serve your community, they address life, health, and safety issues for agencies and the communities that they serve. So out of over 500 standards, we meet and over almost 398 standards. About 200 some standards do not apply to our department for different reasons. It may be the fact that we don't have a union, or we don't run a training academy, or so they're just not applicable to our department. So we have the highest level of accreditation and advanced accreditation process that we go through, and that will be upcoming this July as well as we go through a re-accreditation. So there'll be an opportunity for citizen input during that time, and we'll have outside assessors come in and looking at our department and the practices that take place in our department. So I think there's opportunity for us to look at some of our policies, our use of force policy, and we've had discussion with that group Friday about that. There's a couple of things that need to be more clearly defined in our policy, and probably a couple of items that we can add to our policy. And then, of course, we will have draft copies and go through legal review of those copies, and then we hope to put them in place very soon.
Chief, I personally want to thank you. I've seen you out there, walked with you in some of these marches, and you have had a presence in the community that I think has been just a great blend of, you're kind of a quiet kind of guy, but have the toughness that you have to be chief of a police force. But I think you've exuded a lot of confidence that you're willing to listen, that we as a city are willing to listen. But I want to make something perfectly clear, because I know you've looked out at the crowd, you've seen some of the same signs I've seen of defund the police, and I've gotten a lot of calls about that, or emails about it. And I just want to be perfectly clear. I know there's no one on this dais who's had any conversation about defunding the police, and that would be the furthest thing from what we would want to do. In fact, if the truth were known, we probably need to fund it more. And you've indicated, as you look at your training program that you have, that there may be some adjustments you want to make in that. Well, you can't defund the police and increase the training that you've indicated. So I want our officers to know that from this body, we have absolute full confidence in our officers. They represent the city in a wonderful way, but we always want to continually improve. We've come a long way as a police department over the last decades, and we'll I hear you, we'll continue to grow and improve as a department. Through this whole thing as well, I've seen it's kind of like teachers. Teachers have to raise the kids that go to school now, and the police officers have to answer they answer calls in the community that probably 20 years ago they weren't answering, and so they deal with a lot of mental health issues and a lot of homeless issues. So I want everybody in the community to appreciate the jobs that they do, and I certainly want our force to know and understand that we have their back, and we support them completely. So this is a tough thing when you're getting yelled about and talked about all the time. I can just imagine how some of them might feel, but we're going to get through this, and I think in a very positive way. As you've indicated, the younger people have really made a commitment. This group has a mission, a purpose, a set of values that they have adopted for peaceful protest, and you've listened to them, I've listened to them. I know many on the staff have listened to what the concerns are in the community. And I think if we start and do that, we will hear things that we didn't know. And I know I certainly have, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you and the work that you've been done. It's, these are times when you have to step up, and you have, and so I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to share that, I spoke with a young man during lunch today, and we were talking about some of the initiatives and some of the things, ideas that they had, and they were asking me if police had enough training, and I kind of told them about when police go through the police academy and then the training we do before they go on the road, and he was under the impression that we needed more training, and I said, we certainly support that, but there's tax dollars have to pay for that as well. So I think that a lot of people don't support defunding the police. In fact, they support more training and better equipped and better trained police force, and so we certainly have to think along the same lines.
Thank you. Before you sit down, any other commissioner have any comments?
Just thank you for what you've been doing. Appreciate it. And all the police. Appreciate them very much.
Well, thank you. I think that we've had some very positive communications and dialogue, and I think we need to continue that, and we'll certainly work to improve our police department as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Peterson, we'll get to business.
Your first order of business is consideration of the minutes from your regularly scheduled meeting held on Thursday, June the 4th.
Commissioners?
Move approval. Second.
All right, motion and a second. Ms. Roberts, thank you for coming here tonight. Can you hear us if we speak up? Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of a application for a Class II off-premise beer license for Katie Incorporated, doing business as Bilo Market, located at 2307 Watauga Road. This business is located in a B4 commercial zone. The appropriate reviews have been made, finding no disqualifying factors, and the recommendation is for your approval.
Is the applicant present? Yes. If you would come forward and state your name and address, please.
My name is Manoj Kumar Patel. I live in Kingsport. My address is 5032 Rose Garden Circle.
Very good. Have you read the rules and regulations about the sale of alcohol in Johnson
Yes,
City?
yes,
And
ma'am.
do you agree to abide by those?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good, thank you. Commissioners, anyone have any questions of the applicant?
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. You're welcome to tell us about your business and where you're located. We've got the address, but
Okay, yeah, that's on 2307 on Watauga Road. This is basically, we have mostly business at deli, and it's kind of convenience store too, and gas station. And I want to add, the sales beer, so because increase some sales, and
very good.
so,
Well, best of luck. Thank you.
thank you.
Your next order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
Commissioners, are there any items you would like to pull for further discussion? Commissioner Calhoun?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Hunter?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Fowler?
No.
Vice Mayor? And I have none. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Okay. All right, your next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4738-20. This will be consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners.
If I may, let me read the
Yes, sir.
caption in.
Oh,
Keep
sorry.
us
Please.
legal here.
Yes, sir.
An ordinance to amend Article 2, definition of terms used in the code, Article 3, nonconforming provisions. Article 4, application of regulations, Section 4.7, yards and setbacks, and Section 4.13, accessory structures and uses. And Article 6, use requirements by district in the City of Johnson City zoning ordinance, ready for your consideration on second reading. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mayor, Commissioners, you all received this presentation from me at the last meeting, so I'll go through it again, but I'll go through it quickly. Want to point out the sections under consideration. There are several, cleaning up definitions to clarifying setbacks and yard areas. Do have a couple of areas that have kind of piqued folks' attention, so we'll focus on those. And then finally there, under non-conforming, cleaning up some of the non-conforming language. One of the items gathering some attention is the proposal to remove the rear setback on properties that sit on an improved alley. Improved just means that there was a platted alley sometime in the past, and there may be gravel or asphalt down, and it is a usable alley. And so one of the questions that had been raised, I believe, by the Vice Mayor, which was a great question, where is this going to apply, Preston? Well, we've asked our GIS team to map that for us, and so you can see here that primarily our neighborhoods with improved alleys are those neighborhoods that are right around the central area of town. Those are typically your older, more urban neighborhoods, and so you can see them here on the left-hand side of the screen. We do have one outlier, though, and that is the Park Place subdivision up off of
The river.
thank you, Carroll Creek. And so outside of that, what you see on the map here are those areas. So again, the proposal here is to allow for these more urban, smaller lots to have accessory structures sit right on the alley. And what that does is that pushes the accessory structure back to the furthest edge of the lot, allowing the private property owner to have more private area to themselves, or even the ability to have another smaller accessory structure somewhere else in the rear yard. So we'll look at some examples here in just a minute. Talking about what are accessory structures and accessory buildings, these are two good examples of accessory structures. These are not habitable structures, but gazebos to pool structures, and then pools themselves are considered accessory structures. Accessory buildings are your sheds, your mower sheds. You could have a little smaller structure like you have on the left, or even something a little bit larger like a detached office. I do want to make clear, and I made this point at the last presentation, that the example on the right and any part of these provisions does not allow accessory dwelling units at this time. That may be a conversation we have in the future, but that's not on the table tonight or as part of these amendments. So someone could have a detached office, they could have a detached den, kind of a man cave if they wanted, but those are some examples of your accessory buildings. One of the things that we're also proposing is to adjust how the height is regulated. Right now, we have a fixed height of 15 feet. What we're proposing is that the height be scalable for the house or for the lot, because you have varying heights of houses and all different types of architectural design. You also have a variety of roof types. And so I want to point out the way that we define a roof, the height of a building is by its roof types. So on a flat roof, you measure from the front of the grade to the top of the flat roof, and then with pitched roofs, you measure to the midpoint, and then with this with a mansard, which is a French-style roof, you measure to the deck line. So what we're proposing is that accessory structures cannot exceed that measured point. And so that way it's scalable to the house and scalable to the lot itself. These are some examples of bad and good on the left, and these are pretty extreme, but that's the point, is on the left you can see here where an accessory structure is taller than the house, and that is an example of poor design. On the right here, you'll see an example of a detached structure that sits right about the midpoint of the primary structure. So that's what we're proposing. So let's talk a little bit about the accessory structure location. Part of what we are proposing is to clarify our definitions and the terminology of yards and lot lines. So clarifying where front yards are and side yards, rear yards, but especially here on corner lots, clarifying that we have what's called an exterior side yard. It's basically the front yard again on a side street. Right now, the current code allows for this area to stop here and that the rear yard can extend all the way over to this side street. What we're proposing is that this exterior yard extend all the way down. So any accessory structures would be from this point of the house back. On the left-hand side here, giving you examples based on what we're proposing, where accessory structures could or could not be placed in the yard. So we're talking about zeroing out or allowing accessory structures to sit right on the rear property line with an alley-loaded lot. Here is an example of that. It would also have to sit 7.5 feet off of that if there was, this situation did not apply, and I'll get to that in just a second. Moving up along the side, you would not be able to zero out along the side, so that's a no-no. Over here, accessory structures can be placed in the side or the rear. And then over here, there's a provision that would allow accessory structures to come all the way to the corner, zero out on the alley and zero out on the side property line, but that still requires building code elements and fire code elements to come into play. So someone would not be able to violate fire code, 10-foot separation between buildings, but would allow somebody to place an accessory structure in the corner if they chose to. Now, I've got 3 examples, and we went through these last time, so I'll go through these quickly. Talking about the yard area in the back and how the rear yard area and the house itself guide the square footage of the accessory structure. Here's an example of a typical suburban lot. You've got a 3,500 square foot house. The proposal is that you cannot exceed 50% of the house, so 50% of the house here is 1,700 square feet. 25% of the rear yard, this rear yard's 18,000 square feet, so 4,700. So the winning or the guiding provision in this case is the 1,782. So in this particular example, it was divided in half. 890 went to the pool, 890 went to the pool house or to an accessory structure next to the pool. Here's another example. This is a large suburban kind of an estate-sized lot where you have basically 1+ acres in the back. Here, 25% of that's roughly 11,000 square feet. So again, the house is going to be the guiding principle. Here you have a large house, 5,900 square feet. 50% of that's 2,900, and that can be divided up in a variety of different ways. And then this is your smaller, more urban-sized lot. This is an example where you've also got a corner, the exterior side. We did borrow from, this is a real example, but we've cartooned it here for you. There is an existing accessory structure. So wherever there's a change made to the code, if something is existing, that will not, it's not retroactive. They're not going to have to remove that. So I want to make that clear that whenever the ordinance changes, things that remain in place that were permitted previously are considered non-conforming. So that accessory structure that sits in the exterior side would be non-conforming, and the square footage associated with it comes into play. So here, 50% of the house is 575 square feet. We've got a smaller house, 1,150 square feet. But the provisions in front of you allow for a minimum of 700 square feet. So the 575 jumps up to 700. And you remove 110 from that, and that allows you a 590 square foot structure in the back. So again, this is all about scalability. That's the goal here, to allow for accessory structures and 1, 2, or 3 accessory structures to be placed in the side or the rear yard in urban lots all the way up to your estate-sized lots. And that's it. When this went before the Planning Commission was unanimous in their recommendation of approval, and I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Appreciate it. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this change? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there a motion?
Move for approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion on this? We did receive some emails, and I think from the Tree Street Homeowners Association, or the Snow Group, in favor of this. Okay, Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of a resolution for the Sharp Farm annexation. A resolution to annex certain property located within the 11th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property being known as the Sharp Farm annexation, to zone said property B4 Planned Arterial Business District as described herein, and to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee accordingly, being a part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, is ready for your consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Mr. Peterson, I noticed the plan of services. Is this what you were just introducing? It's first on our agenda. Should the actual annexation be our first action? 4746-20?
Well,
The
the
annexation?
way state law reads, you have to do the annexation by resolution.
Right.
And then you assign zoning through an ordinance, which is ordinance number 4746-20. And then the plan of services is item 6.4.
Opposite on what I've got here. That's what's confusing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
6.2 is plan of services, which is first on our list.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
does it say C, plan of services? I'm not at all
The ordinance.
C ordinance and C plan of services, the title references each part back and forth.
Right.
And I apologize for any
I just-
confusion.
Just sequentially, what should we do first? The resolution?
It doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Okay.
You've got to approve all three of them, and it
Right.
makes no difference
But you just
whatsoever.
introduced 6.2, is that correct?
I introduced 6.2, which is the resolution for annexation. Yes, ma'am.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Oh,
wait,
this is
this is
public
public
hearing.
hearing.
No, yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. All right. I will open the public hearing then on ordinance 4746-20. Is there anyone here to speak for or against? Okay, if you would come forward and state your name and your address.
I'm a poor speaker to begin with, so by taking this off, it'll help me a little bit.
All
if you'll
right,
bear
go right
with me.
ahead.
My name is Lynn Hodge. I reside at 281 Highland Church Road, Johnson City, and I'm representing Rosalie Prophet in these proceedings. Mayor Brock, members of the City Commission, thank you for allowing me your time and consideration in hearing this request. We're asking for annexation to the City of Johnson City and rezoning of 19.57 acres of a 35.5 acre tract of property referred to as the Sharp Farm. We're asking the property be rezoned from its present PMD district, planned manufacturing, which actually permits more intensive, impactful uses than what our request is called for in the B4 request. Some of the things permitted in the PMB, and that's what is presently zoned: manufacturing, assembly plants, processing plants, storage, warehousing, wholesaling, distribution, including trucking terminals. At your last commission meeting, you approved on third reading rezoning of the Ballard Health property from RTP to B4 zoning, consisting of approximately 45 acres. The Ballard Health property lies inside the city limits and directly across the street from the Sharp Farm property. The Sharp Farm lies inside the commercial development quadrant identified by the City of Johnson City as having the most potential for commercial development in the future. The rezoning of this property to B4 has the potential to accelerate commercial development, seeking to take advantage of the economic incentive zone, and this site will be a catalyst for future commercial development in the immediate area. Legislation signed by the governor last year authorized the city of Johnson City to identify and draw the boundary lines for retail tourism incentive zone consisting of 950 acres and lying in the Boones Creek community, of which included the Sharp Farm property. The city of Johnson City identified the properties, approved the legislative request, and forwarded the resolution to Nashville for final approval by the state, with the stipulation that the land would have to be inside the city limits of Johnson City to benefit from these incentives, which would allow developers to offset various costs. Now, this delegated body of 5 commissioners, including the mayor, has to make a decision on what is best for not me, not what is best for the Profit family, and not what is best for those who have voiced a negative opinion on this request, but more specifically for what is best for Washington County and the city of Johnson City, what is best for the taxpayers of Washington County and the city of Johnson City, what is best for creating new jobs in Washington County and Johnson City, what is best to keep our tax rate low, approve this request or not approve it, what will bring more sales tax dollars, approve this request or not approve it. Because of the coronavirus, practically every city and every county government and state of Tennessee and elsewhere are struggling to balance their budgets. So what do you prefer, to increase the tax rate on all existing taxpayers or to increase the tax base by bringing in new business? Some in the community have voiced concern about the separation of commercial properties from residential properties. You could not have a better barrier than the existing one, which is there now. It's a very high ridge covered by vegetation consisting of mature trees, underbrush, pasture, a double railroad track, and a siding. There are only 3 residential properties in the immediate area, and none of them have voiced an opinion to me as being against this rezoning. For those of you who are tuned in on YouTube and those of you who are here in the audience in the courtroom, please keep in mind that these 5 people, the mayor and the commissioners, have an awesome task and responsibility of making a decision on this request, because there has been a lot of publicity in the past on it. But they have to make this decision based on what is best for the city of Johnson City, and also their fiduciary responsibility to all the taxpayers of Johnson City. You can't please all the people all the time, but you can please most of the people sometime. The population of Washington County is 129,000 plus, which includes 66,900 residing in the city limits of Johnson City. There's 72,500 plus active registered voters in all of Washington County, and there are 64 plus parcels of property on the tax rolls of all of Washington County. I would like to see us add to that number with the annexation and the rezoning of this property. Thank you, Mayor Brock, Commissioner Wise, Commissioner Calhoun, Commissioner Fowler, and Commissioner Hunter for your time, your patience, and your thoughtful consideration for this project. Now I would like to introduce to you Steve Weston, who is the investor and the developer for this project, consisting of approximately 70 acres. Steve.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. First thing I have to do is tell you my address. 1183 Reserve Place, Johnson City, Tennessee, Highland Ridge. Now I need to apologize. Tonight was not the night that I was planning to break this project to you folks. I would If I had the time, which I only had a week, I would have seen Mr. Peterson, I would have tried to see everybody, but here we are. So this is a rush job, it's premature, this baby is really not ready yet, still in the oven, but since the property pertaining to this also pertains to what you're considering right now, I was asked to speak about the project.
Did you want us to have these folders first?
Sure, there's a video also.
Okay.
Do you want to show the video?
That's up to you. This is your time.
Okay, do you have it? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it would be best to show the video because it puts it all together in a period of 125 seconds.
I believe she put it in here. I'll look at it for you. Can we start it over?
Yeah.
Their volume?
You got a volume?
I have to ask Ms. Graham. Wendy, do you have volume on this? No, she is. Do you have volume on it? I didn't know. Like phone trees.
Good job.
Oh, you're on the city commission. And here's those minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, it's in there. But it's not
Is it the TV volume maybe?
Sorry, there needs some updates. It might be the date of the
It's only music, otherwise I'd sing it to you. but-
Well, let's start it over and we'll just read it.
Yeah. Just here to do that.
I was thinking of that. Dancing with colors and that's good.
My wife's going to kill me that the sound wasn't there. She says there's nothing without the sound.
I think we got the message, though. It was very impressive.
Anyway, now there's, the still pictures are in your booklet. So this is obviously a complex project, and we rushed it so that we could give you something tonight. I think the person who was rushed the most was the architect to come up with the conceptual site plan in 5 days. So it's very preliminary, but it does take into account the topography, which is beautiful. And we're engaged in a wetlands delineation and mitigation plan at the moment. Of course, geological engineering and site plan engineering and so on. And at the appropriate time, we would have made a presentation a little more detailed than this, but I just want you to get the feel for it. And the 19 acres does fall within this 70 acres. And I do want to express my gratitude to all the landowners in this area that have worked with me over the past 6 months to put together a project that would fit into this property and have the visibility that it has to Boones Creek Road. And also it was important to me to actually have Boones Creek involved in this particular development, because not that it's going to be a river walk in San Antonio, but that is one of the inspirations for this. And when we met with the group that's doing the mitigation plan or mapping out the wetlands and so on, the question was, do we want to relocate the stream? Do we want to contribute into a mitigation bank? And the answer to that is no. We actually want to restore and beautify and feature the stream on the property, make it into a lake, and part of it, which would be the retention pond with beautiful fountains, and actually have a rainbow-shaped bridge that goes over the lake that connects one side of the development to the other side of the development. So these are the kind of visions that we have for this property, and we're very excited, and we're very excited to be able to represent this to you when it's been fully developed. But this is what we have so far, and we hope that it's helpful for you for your determination. And I hope to meet all of you in person at the right time, which hopefully will be soon, and we won't have to wear masks, but that's the project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of the developer before he sits down?
I called Steve last week. I said, I've got a commission meeting and a rezoning of a portion of this property. How soon could you get something? What day we had?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know. And so we set a date, and there was 4 truckloads of people came in at one time on this one piece of property and went the whole stream business and all. So thank you for, and part of this, the last part of this, I just saw tonight.
Oh, that's right.
I didn't see that,
Yeah.
that conceptual. So thank you for the hard work that you put into it. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you. We'll continue with the public hearings if there's anyone else. Is there anyone else who would speak for or against this project? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move approval.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all for coming.
Your next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4746-20. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning B4 planned arterial business zoning to a portion of certain property within the 11th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Sharp Farm Annexation, is ready for your consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Okay, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against the zoning recommendation? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move for approval. Or second.
Okay. Commissioner Fowler was the motion, Vice Mayor the second. Any other questions? Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of the plan of services for the Sharp Farm annexation resolution. As is pointed out in your packet, all city services are available to the property today with the exception of water and sewer services. The plan of services call for that to be extended within 5 years of the effective date of the annexation or before a development on the site obtains a certificate of occupancy, whichever is earlier. We would recommend your approval of the plan of services.
Okay, Mr. Peterson, I think at one time we had talked about, at some point in time, Christian Church Road was going to require some work. With the project we're seeing here, I'm sure that's probably something that will have to be looked at, so.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay, very
it
good.
is.
I will open the public hearing on the plan of services. Is there anyone to speak here for or against? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is a resolution for annexation of the Nectal property. This is associated with ordinance number 4740-20. A resolution to annex certain property located within the 11th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property being known as the Nectal annexation, to zone said property R2 low-density residential as described herein, and to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City accordingly, being a part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, is ready for your consideration on third and final reading. This is the single-family property out on Boarding Chapel Road.
Yes, sir.
And nothing has changed since your last reading.
I think we're probably good with that, unless there's something else you want to add to it, Mr. Mitchell?
Nothing other than you did continue the public
Right.
hearing for all three of these decisions, so you would just want to close the public hearing.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Since the public hearing was open, is there anyone here to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I will, okay. I will close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any other comments, questions? Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter? Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4740-20, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled "An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning R2 low-density residential zoning to certain property within the 11th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Nectal annexation." Ready for your consideration on third reading and continuation of public hearing.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next item is consideration of the plan of services associated with ordinance 4740-20, the Nectal annexation. This is on third reading and continuation of public hearing. Nothing has changed since your last reading.
Is there anyone here to speak? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move approval. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Mr. Roberts?
Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Ordinance number 4741-20, an ordinance to abandon a portion of an alley traversing properties at 1008 East 8th Avenue and 1010 East 8th Avenue, and a portion of Wall Street right-of-way adjoining 1008 East 8th Avenue upon the terms and conditions contained herein, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, ready for your consideration on third reading after continuation of public hearing.
Okay. I don't see anyone here to comment, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move for approval? Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4742-20, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from RTP Research Technology Park zoning to B4 Planned Arterial Business zoning and RTP to RO2 Medium Density Residential zoning, portions of certain property identified on tax map 45 as parcel number 52, ready for your consideration on third reading after continuation of public hearing.
And this is the property along State of Franklin.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there anyone here to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move for approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4743-20. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from R2C low-density residential zoning to B4 planned arterial business zoning, certain property located at 2919 Dorothy Street in Johnson City, Tennessee. Ready for your consideration on third reading and continuation of public hearing. Nothing has changed since your last reading.
Very good. Anyone to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing.
Move approval? Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4745-20. An ordinance to establish the property tax rates, appropriate funds, and adopt a budget for the fiscal year July the 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Ready for your consideration on third reading. Dustin.
Yes, sir. We would ask that you make one change this evening, and that is to the Community Development Fund that I believe was mentioned, discussed Monday night during your agenda review. That is to add $149,667 in expenditures. Funding source is net increase in revenue due to CARES Act funding of $55,148, and the remaining out of fund balance at $94,519. Mr. Wilson is here if you have any specific questions regarding that. Otherwise, excuse me, we would ask that you approve this as amended on third reading.
Any questions of Mr. Thompson on this amended, on the amendment? Everybody good with it? Okay. All right, I think we have it. This is third reading of our budget for 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Okay. Ms. Roberts?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Just want to say, and I think we all feel this way, that we want to thank you and the city manager and all that helped put this together. When we're seeing cities across the state, I think Nashville was looking at 37 cents.
No, it was over a dollar.
A dollar.
Over $1.
34%.
34%.
Let's just stop and say that. They raised their tax rate over a dollar.
And for us to be able to provide a budget, it's a tight budget. And unfortunately, there's not any frill or fanfare included in it. But for us to be able to provide the level of service and continue that for which we expect without a tax increase is greatly appreciated, and we appreciate all your help, especially considering the difficulty of being able to communicate and whatnot with the COVID-19 situation. But with that, yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. And same thing, Mr. Wilson and Dustin and City Manager, thank y'all so much. And, it was, even though this is a bare bones budget, at least because we were performing fairly well up through February, at least gave us a little bit of cover for what we had to do. But just to all the staff who, from the minute we realized something was going to happen, began to really examine all their expenditures and cut back a lot. So, thank you.
The staff has done an excellent job of managing the balance of this budget. Excuse me again, I promise this is allergies. Is that right, Dr. Calhoun?
No comment.
They have done an extraordinary job of managing their expenses. The month isn't over yet, and we're a long way from having May and June final financial reports. But I think we're going to finish up this fiscal year much better than what we originally anticipated we could. So, we're going to call this a bare bones budget, and this budget was prepared taking into consideration the worst case scenario, but also recognizing that if the economy picks up and our revenues pick up during the course of the year, we can go back and reappropriate the additional revenue and pick up some of those things that we were hoping to get accomplished in FY21. So we will monitor closely, and as monies become available, we will make additional reinvestments into our community to stimulate the economy and help folks keep working and enjoying life here in Northeast Tennessee.
Thank you. Just on a personal note, I want to thank you all for your kindness and patience during this process. It's been a most unusual budget, so I appreciate everything.
A lot of numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Not to mention, this is Dustin's first budget by
It
himself.
is. You've done a great job.
If you can get through this, the rest of them will be easy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, I'm guessing our public input, we're not going to have any. So
Pete, did you have anything you wanted to say?
he's
Already
been
spoken.
So, and you did your manager's report last
time, yes, ma'am.
We'll,
I would like to add one thing. I was up at the Liberty Bell Gym one day earlier this week, the new gym. We had some conversation about that, I think, at our last meeting, and wondering when they were going to be open, and the contractor saying by the end of July, and I expressed some reservation about whether they would really make that. I hope this is one of those cases, and I think I might, that I'm going to eat my words. They are making phenomenal progress up there. They got the entire gym floor down in a period of about 3 days.
Wow.
They worked pretty much round the clock over the weekend, last weekend. Gym floor's down, the goals are up, they're painting walls.
Make a shot, the sun go in?
No, they've got the goals are covered up where you can't shoot because the floor's not ready.
Well, and it's important for us to go ahead and have another facility people aren't allowed to use during COVID. Quicker we can get it up and running and then bar people from use. I think that'll be great.
Yes. So I think that it'll be really close on getting the cafeteria and and kitchen and the gymnasium open. They were setting kitchen equipment and making really good progress, and I think that's going to be a building that the school system and the city commission can be extremely proud of. It's a great improvement.
Good, thank you. And I think you also mentioned this afternoon, you wanted to schedule TSG to be at our next Monday
Yes,
meeting.
ma'am. I'm sorry, I'd forgotten about that. I did have a meeting with TSG, two smart guys today. The third one wasn't able to make the meeting, but they came in and gave me an update report today on where they are with their body of work, and I'd like to invite them into the next agenda review meeting for a report to you all. They've done a lot more work than what I anticipated they would have accomplished by now, and they've done a good amount of analysis and a market survey, which is the report that they were really supposed to deliver to us, and have already transitioned into the implementation phase as far as making things happen and getting some businesses up and moving forward. So I think that, we need to get them in here and hear from them and carefully weigh our options and as to how we move forward with further development of entrepreneurship in our investments. I think there's some great opportunities for some different levels of effort, and we just need to make sure we get them coordinated to where they maximize our return. And I think you'll be very pleased with what work they've done to this point.
Good stuff, thank you. So Commissioners, if you have any just quick updates on the committees that you serve on or any other input that you want to give. Commissioner Hunter, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. One, and this isn't an update, I was curious if you had any information on school opening, any information from?
Graduation is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Kermit Tipton Stadium. And Tim Belial assured me that it was going to happen tomorrow. I tried to paint him in the corner and say that he would guarantee there would be no rain, and I couldn't quite get him to commit to that. So that's great to be able to do that, to recognize the students and the parents of the graduates this year. As far as the school opening, there has been some additional guidance come forward just in the last day or two about school reopenings and school transportation. In my last conversation with Dr. Barnett earlier in the week, they're still planning on trying to open up August 4th on schedule. Not quite sure what it's going to look like and how they're going to feed children. The transportation piece is the piece that's got me most perplexed. If we have to do social distancing, we can transport 13 children on a 72-passenger school bus. We can't buy buses, and we're already about 7 drivers short for what we got. So hauling 13 on a bus isn't an option. We've got to come up with something different. And Charlie and Eldonna are working on it. I mean, we talked the other day about plexiglass between seats, but I'm not sure that the Federal Highway Safety Group's going to sign off on that, because those are huge shards of plastic if you have an accident, so that's probably not going to work. And I say that just as an example of we're trying to think out of the box every way we can. So I think if we can solve the transportation piece, I have good confidence that the school system has thought about how to deliver education in person, how to deliver education from distance, and how to feed children, and what groups of children are probably not going to be able to come into school due to health reasons, and how they educate those folks. I really think transportation is the biggest challenge, but if they open up school on August the 4th, we'll have something figured out by August the 4th, I promise you.
Good. I stepped in for Dr. Fowler on the CVB, and they discussed this year's budget and tabled it, wanting to finish up the MOA with the city. So we're nearing completion on that, I think. And talked about some of their campaigns that they've started on, which are really exciting. targeting large markets and really highlighting the fact that we're not just a great place to visit, but a great place to live, not just because of our natural resources, but also because of, our experiences during the COVID pandemic. But it was a great meeting, and I learned a lot.
Are you permanently taking, or you just sat in?
He sat in because I
Okay.
was
Okay.
actually seeing patients when they wanted to meet. so.
Understand. Commissioner Fowler, anything
That
you'd
was
like to
the
say?
one that I missed, and thankfully Commissioner Hunter sat in for me.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Planning Commission, getting ready to make some pretty significant changes. I think we have 4 appointments to the Planning Commission, so that's going to change pretty dramatically. On a personal note, I've been getting a lot of questions from the community members about the fall elections, and as I told all of you privately in March, that I'm not going to seek a 4-year term to the commission, and I think it's only fair that the community members that have an interest in this seat know that well in advance. There'll be plenty of time later on where I can express my appreciation to all of you and the city staff for this experience, but it's a long way to November, and we got a lot of work to do, and I'm committed to being an active commissioner until then, but I thought it would be important that the community understand that.
well, regretfully,
So we'll call him Lame Duck Larry going forward. There's your headline.
not what we wanted to hear,
So-
but we understand the reasoning behind your decision, so thank you. Vice Mayor?
JCDA met, well, fairly long ago, and I think I reported on it in an earlier meeting. We will meet again tomorrow. And so there's some HR policy and various things. They will be moving out of the net rep office at the end of this month, and will be in the building where Property Experts has some office space up on the upper level. So that is coming. So a lot of activity there.
And for me, of course, I serve on the Bright Ridge Board. We continue to focus a lot on the broadband rollout and trying to get more of the fixed wireless out in the rural areas. And then they're looking at another solar farm, so that would be exciting for Washington County for sure and for our service area. Also, I'm on the Animal Control Board. You may have seen an article in the paper yesterday where there's a lawsuit against a couple of our staff people had to prosecute a case that was the canine where the dog was killed in their custody. So that will be, worked on. So if you have any questions about it, you can let me know. But other than that, I think that's it. Any final words, Mr. Peterson?
Of course, I'm your representative on the Airport Authority Board. Air traffic continues to be off substantially, about 90%. It has impacted revenues at the airport. Of course, you really can't control expenditures, a lot of expenditures at the airport, because you have to keep it open and perform all of your majority of your operational functions, even though there's no planes landing. They did receive CARES Act funding, which will put them in a position to not have to hit their fund balance this year or for the budget that we will be considering next week at the board meeting next week. So while air traffic is off significantly due to the CARES Act funding availability, we're going to be able to continue with capital projects that are planned and keep operations going without destroying fund balance. So
It would
it's a
be
real
good
blessing.
if the commission would like, or we could individually have the executive director come over and
Mr.
talk
Causey.
about really the strategy on the development of Aerospace Park. We've all put a lot of money into that project, and I guess, with current staff running the airport and all the requirements of that, how is that being approached? I mean, who are we turning to try to help develop that property? So it'd be good to have him come over and just kind of do a review and
Be
for us
glad
to get to know him a
Yes,
little bit
ma'am.
better. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sounds good. All right, hearing nothing else, meeting adjourned.